how to avoid showing our ego to our closest people. Well, see, these challenges are going to come up wherever you are. And in our situations where we feel safe, first of all, it's not only our closest people that see our ego. The ego is actually what we're moving through most of the whole world with. What our closest people tend to get is the vulnerability of why we live in the ego. So, what's beneath my ego is what we tend to start opening for those we love. As we move through our outer world, that is the ego we're moving through it with. That's, here's who I am, here's how I interact with the world. But it tends not to have such negative consequences as it does in our families with our loved ones. Because, most of our other interactions tend to be very short, superficial. How to avoid it in the families? The dilemma is that it's in our families that our deepest buttons get pushed. Someone who doesn't have that power over you, chances are isn't going to cause a reaction in you. It happens sometimes. Some guy steals our parking spot. We're having a bad mood, a bad day. We shout at him. But we're much more likely to lose ourselves around our loved ones. We're not. First of all, it's really hard to be on your best behavior 24 hours a day. And so we tend to put on a good show for those around us. It tends to be a lot harder when you're with your loved ones. That tends to be where we let down our best behavior. So the first piece is to ask yourself, why do you do that? Why is it that my loved ones deserve less than the checkout clerk? Why do my loved ones deserve less than my waiter or waitress at a restaurant? Why am I more prepared to take care of how polite I am, how respectful I am to someone I don't even know than to someone who's given me their life? So you have to ask yourself that. And sometimes simply asking ourselves that is enough to make us realize, oh, wait, what am I doing here? The next piece of it, though, is to figure out inside you, what is it that is pushing my buttons? What is it that's happening here? Because what happens with our closest relations is we tend very quickly to develop an attachment to how they act. Whether it's because they did it for the first few weeks while they were courting us and now we hold them to it for the next 50 years. That's where the flowers and the chocolates and, you used to do this. And it's like, well, you did it for 3 weeks. You haven't done it in 30 years. But in my mind, it's still, you used to do that. So expectations sometimes come there simply because they were on their best behavior at the beginning. But more typically, the expectations come from what we witnessed in our family of origin. The types of patterns that we've seen. The holes that we feel in ourselves. So let's say that one of the issues that I have is I don't feel good enough. Okay? Let's say that that's one of the issues that I'm moving through the world with. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Maybe my parents always told me you're not good enough. Maybe that's been sort of my issue my whole life. Well, in the outer world, I can control it mostly maybe my close friends would hear me say, oh my God, this dress makes me look fat, or oh my God, I'm so stupid, or, but mostly I'm able to keep it in check. But then you and I get married. Or I move into your house, having married your brother or your son, or whatever the relationship may be. We are now under the same roof. I have still got this issue of not feeling good enough. I'm cooking dinner. You say, here's the salt. Now I've already put salt in. You just meant to help. You have no idea I already put salt in. You just walked into the kitchen. You saw the thing of salt across the kitchen. You thought, let me help her. She's new in this house, or we're newly married, or she says I never help her. Whatever the situation may be, Cello, let me bring her the salt. If I weren't moving through the world with that issue, I'd say, thanks. I've actually already put salt in. End of discussion. But because I have that hole in me, I say, what are you saying? Does my food not have enough salt in it? Am I the worst cook? Oh my God, why don't you just come out and tell me? Is that why you didn't eat dinner last night? Is that why you've been coming home so late? Oh my God, and I throw down my cooking utensils and go to my room and cry myself to sleep. This is how our relationships tend to move. And now you're left standing in the kitchen going, what do I do? I just handed her a can of salt. I was just trying to be nice. And, maybe then, let's say you've got a hole. You've got a pattern of also not feeling good enough. Maybe you came from a different but similar type of situation where you also never felt good enough. This is a common epidemic, by the way. The vast majority of people move through the world not feeling good enough. Now you, instead of realizing, oh my God, she's having an issue, clearly this has triggered something in her, and rather than coming into the bedroom and putting your hand on me and saying, honey, I'm so sorry, or beta, I'm so sorry, depending on the relationship, I really didn't mean anything by it. I had no idea you'd already put salt in. I was just trying to be nice. You can't do that because you've also got that hole of not feeling good enough. And so me reacting like that and running out of the kitchen has triggered it in you. Because really what I'm saying is you've done something wrong. I was in here, I was happy, I was cooking dinner. You handed me the salt, you ruined the evening. Now you react by saying, who the hell do you think you are? I just handed you the salt, for God's sakes. What's your problem? Because you go on the offensive. That's what you learned. Maybe it's what your father did. Maybe every time your mom or someone suggested something to him, he went on the offensive and immediately started criticizing the other person. It's also something a lot of us do. So you've learned that. Now you turn around and you say, what the hell is your problem? I've stormed out one way, you storm out the other way. Who comes back first? God only knows. Right? Now, how do we deal with this? Well, you see it's a dance. You see it's not, and then should you find yourself in marriage counseling, she's going to say, he always criticizes my cooking. Right? He says I'm not a good enough cook. Everything I do, nothing is good enough. And he's like, I never said this. I handed her a can of salt once. She's walked into this relationship carrying this. But you may not know that. The psychologist or whoever you're sitting with may be able to see it. But you're going to both walk in saying the other one is the problem. I'm going to say, you criticize everything I do. I can't do anything right. Evidenced by the fact that you handed me a can of salt. You're going to say, I'm crazy. I react to everything. I misunderstand everything you say. I don't understand you. evidenced by a reaction that I had that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with my family. The one I came from, not the one I married into. And this is where it's so important to understand that ego and then work with it. And this is where introspection is so important, so that you know. He hands you the can of salt and you feel it. You feel it inside you. Ooh. Right? And you're just about to yell and run out. But now you've started meditating. Now you've started a spiritual practice. You've started introspecting. And you ask yourself one question. And this, for me, on a personal level, has been by far the most valuable question I have ever asked myself, and I ask it to this day. Is there an alternative? It is my favorite form of self-therapy. Simply, is there an alternative? Okay, inside, ooh. Okay, I know how to do that. That's my default reaction. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't berate myself. I don't say you're stupid. I don't say you react. Nothing. Simply a question. Is there an alternative? And I have yet to have a situation where I've asked the question and found that no, there is no alternative. There's always an alternative. There's always an alternative. Is there another way? Doesn't mean you always have to choose the other way. Doesn't mean you even have to choose it right now. But simply knowing that there is another way creates that space of it's not, well, I had to run out. I had to cry because my God, didn't you see him criticizing my food? But it simply opens up the space. There might be another way. And since staying married, staying happy, staying peaceful is all of our highest goals, presumably. I mean, presumably nobody has the highest goal of, how miserable of a marriage you can have or how many divorces you can go through or how miserable your life can be. Since being peaceful and joyful is always our highest goal, when you say to yourself, might there be an alternative, then the question becomes, well, all right, how else might I respond? How would someone who didn't have this particular hole, this pattern, this ego situation respond? Imagine for a moment I didn't feel less than. How would I respond? And let me try that one on. See how that fits. And what you find is when you do it, it feels really good. It fits really well. And the situation then resolves. And as you've done that, it then impacts the other. Normally we just go through literally hitting each other's buttons, bouncing off each other like this. But if I don't do that, the example that I love on this is, let's say that you and I both are holding opposite ends of a string, okay? We're both pulling. If I let go, even you're still pulling, that string goes slack in your hands. All of the tension in the string is gone 100%. We usually talk in relationships about 50-50. Well, okay, I'll go 50%. If you'll come 50%, we've got to do this compromise thing. And if you can, great. But realize that whether you look at it through the law of physics or the law of love or the law of spirituality, the truth is, if I simply let go of the tension from my end, 100% of it disappears. I don't need you to let go. 100% of it goes. So if I make a commitment, I'm not going to do this tension thing I'm going to always choose the alternative, whatever it may be. Because I'm choosing peace. I'm choosing love. I'm choosing a happy marriage. And that choice I have. And that choice everyone has.